Join me over here at Canon's C100. Now, the camera you may already recognize. It's kind of old. The lens is our L series 70-200 f2.8 lens. The lens, when connected to a 5D, a 70D, something like that, it's got a little switch over here that allows you to switch from manual focus to autofocus. You see the switch right here? Let's see it on Alex's camera for a second. Fantastic. Okay, so that switch brings us from manual focus to autofocus on a DSLR. Now, on a C100, C300, sort of their cinema EOS cameras, you haven't seen continuous autofocus yet. Sure, you could get a momentary autofocus, but that's not always enough. That's not always enough. So let's cut to this C100 for a moment. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Right now, I've got my manual. I've got my switch set to manual focus, so I could sort of jump in on Alex here, crank the barrel, and there, I've got myself a manual focus. So if I were to then swing around and aim at my table, my camera's all out of focus, right? So now, let's just jump to another camera so you can see what I'm doing here. We're going to activate on the barrel of the lens, here, we're going to activate our autofocus feature. So I throw the lens into autofocus, and you'll see, let's go back to the, there we go. You see that white bit in the center of my screen? That's a 20% height, 25% width center cut of the image. So now, as long as that image is white, anywhere I turn, I'm going to automatically capture an autofocus. Now, this is much better than phase detection. When I swing back to the mixer here, you'll note that there's not a lot of hunting. It aims and it achieves focus right away. Now, if I wanted to stop it from hunting, I can, let's go to Alex for a second. If I want to stop it from hunting, what I can do is assign to, let's say, assignable button number 7 here. I can assign a button to activate my autofocus hold. So let's go back to the Canon just for a second. When I activate autofocus hold, you see the AF and the square are still there, but they're ghosted out. They're grayed out, which means it's holding the focus from that distance. So I can now swing it around, aiming back at Alex. I'm a little bit out of focus because I've held at the previous distance, but if I now re-engage, watch that center and the AF go white because I've hit that auto lock button. Now we're back into autofocus mode, and we jumped into this continuous focus. So stay on this camera for a moment. I'm going to show you where that's found in the menu. First, in the camera menu, you've got to get yourself down to autofocus mode and make sure that it's set to continuous. Next, in the others menu, you've got to go to the assignable buttons, and I've assigned button number 7 to be my autofocus lock. This is really good for handheld stuff, and for tripod stuff, there's a button number 8 that you can also assign to the autofocus lock. So let's jump out of the menu and just show you again. Right now I'm in continuous focus, which means even if I swing back around to my table, the camera is going to find focus on that mixer. And unlike phase detection, it doesn't have to go past the mixer and come back, sort of in a long hunt. With this autofocus upgrade, it finds focus twice as fast as with the phase detection. So this is called twice as fast as with contrast. So this is called dual pixel autofocus phase detection. Verge, do you have a graphic that sort of shows what's going on? On the sensors of Canon C100, the pixels are actually able to be divided in half. So on top is a look at the pixels. On the bottom is a look at how they're divided. The pixels can then, from the same lensed image, create 2 images per pixel. This allows them to compare the phase differential between one side of the pixel and the other. It's a lot of engineering and a lot of math, but what it boils down to is you can now leave your camera in continuous autofocus, and you're cutting your autofocus hunting down time by half. So for the guys that are doing weddings, the guys that are doing documentaries, once you throw the hardware switch on the lens into autofocus, your camera is now in continuous focus. If you want to prevent it from doing any hunting at all, you can assign an autofocus lock button either here on number 7, right where your thumb is for handheld operation, or here on number 8, a little more convenient for tripod operation. So that, let's just go back to the Canon one more time. When my autofocus box is white, it's hunting. I can lock with my autofocus lock button. So I'm locked at that distance. Now it's not going to hunt again until I reactivate the focus. And when I do, it hunts super quick, somewhat natural, so it doesn't zoom past the mixer and then have to come back in order to find your focus. Now, how can you get your existing C100 upgraded to get this autofocus upgrade, you might ask? I'm glad you asked. We'll help you out. Call us up at Midtown Video. We'll get you the address of a Canon service center where for $500 they'll perform the upgrade. Now, if you haven't yet purchased your C100, then you're in even better shape. Call your buddies at Midtown Video. We've got them sitting on the shelf, already upgraded to have this dual pixel phase detection autofocus. Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, this is kind of untested. I mean, can people really use this autofocus in the field? My answer for you comes from our friend Brent Ramsey. Brent Ramsey is a marketing technician for Canon. He used to be a director of photography in Hollywood, and he spent all week at NAB in Las Vegas hanging out at the Canon booth with guys like Vincent Laforet and other famous DPs. A couple really good examples he gave us was with the Movi. So they took a Canon, let's see, it was a 50mm 1.2 lens, wide open, and left it in autofocus mode, stuck it on the Movi, and they were able to walk around the crowd and keep a continuous autofocus without having to crank the wheel. So you can imagine if you're on a Steadicam, if you're shooting a documentary, if you're doing a wedding and you don't want to have to be cranking the lens all the time, get yourself the upgraded version of the C100, and you've got continuous autofocus. We're going to pause here for a moment. We've got a question coming in from the internet.
Is that for just the C100?
So that's a great question. Is this autofocus upgrade only available in the C100? Currently, yes, but come May, we're going to release the autofocus upgrade also for the C300. Additionally, with the C300 autofocus upgrade, there's an auto iris upgrade. So we're really taking the Cinema EOS line and making it really accessible to guys who are more familiar with the video style of shooting where you can put your lens into autofocus.